So what is the nature of our suffering? So these are some of the statements that you may be saying to yourself from time to time. Others may say these to you. You may say these to other people. You see people saying them to each other in all kinds of environments, whether that's your professional environment, your personal environment. Gosh knows we see a lot of this stuff on social media. And you can tell that behind this is a real suffering of depression, of sadness, or of angst and anger. Why me? I don't deserve this. Or entitlement. I absolutely deserve this. Or such sadness and depression and just, I can't deal. I need to distract myself. Let me bury my head into a pint of Ben and Jerry's, or binge watch movies so I can distract myself and feel happier and not have to deal with my life or these challenges that I'm experiencing. And then you have others who are more aggressive. Can you believe that person? She's so judgmental. He's so judgmental. Very hypocritical. You see a lot of this stuff on social media. Everybody calling each other names. Just this vitriol that is coming out with people. And then you have people who feel like they're just filled with lack. There's lack all around them. They don't have enough. They are not enough. They don't have enough in their lives. The people around them aren't enough. There's always something missing. There's always something wrong. And then you have people who feel like they're a victim. Somebody's always out to get them. Somebody's always trying to make them look bad. Nothing's ever their fault. It's always somebody else's fault. And all of these things that just fill us with angst and sadness and just suffering. It's just all kinds of suffering. And so why is that? What is creating all of that? So you have these underlying emotions that are filling us with all kinds of discomfort, from anger and jealousy and envy and frustrations, fear, all of these things that just roll us up into a ball so much in our lives, and it makes us miserable. So where does all this come from? Well, you've heard many psychologists, Jung and Freud and all of these people talk about childhood. They talk about the inner child, the wounded child, and honestly, that's where a lot of this does start. And so let's talk about it from a realistic standpoint instead of psychology. But it's the reality is that when we are young and as we go through life, we have expectations that were not met. Things happen to us we didn't expect. Things didn't happen that we did expect, and those unmet expectations caused us pain, caused us discomfort, caused us something that was uncomfortable. And so then when that happens, we think all kinds of thoughts about it. What does that mean? What does that mean about me? What does that say about me? What does that say about you? What does that say about life? What does that say about these circumstances? And so our mind, I call it the monkey mind, it just starts going with all these thoughts. Okay, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And so we start running through all these thoughts. And then with that, we decide what we think it means. And then that provokes emotions. That either promotes sadness, or it promotes blame or shame or guilt, or whatever it is that those thoughts and are creating, the stories you're creating. That essentially is what we're doing, is we're starting to create stories about who we are. Stories about who others are, stories about how life is. And so we create these stories, and then these stories continue to then perpetuate themselves with more thoughts and more emotions that then seem to validate our stories. And then we essentially are creating a conditioning in our lives. We create our own conditioning that then is how we experience life. So as our unmet expectations are causing us discomfort, and we think what we think about them, and we create emotions in response, and then we create those stories. So then that's where we are experiencing and how we're experiencing life. So many of you may have heard the saying, as above, so below, or as within, so without. So as our inner world is, and how we create our inner world with all of these stories, those are what shapes our lens through which we then see what happens to us in our lives. And so we are actually creating these stories ourselves based on our monkey mind, This is the ego that's running around in the thought stream. And those create conflicts because I have a story, you have a story, others have a story, and those stories each come with expectations and understandings that we think are the way things are, whether that's who we are, who you are, or how life is. And then they create conflict. So I want to expect you to live in my story and have the same box that I'm putting you in, that I put myself in, and you have your stories. And so our stories start conflicting. And that's a lot of times what happens in our world is our egos and our shadows, which are creating these stories for us, they conflict. And our shadows are combating each other.